Welcome to Pro Advocate Radio with your host James O'Brien and Deb Beecham, Director and Founder of My Advocate Center, and our special guest George Gamble, owner of Investigative Solutions, LLC. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Now, one of the things, what we talk about here is, of course, family court system. A lot of times you guys get involved in that. But before we jump into that, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the investigative end of things.
Absolutely. I was in the military for some time, worked with some outstanding units. Of course, we all love the military.
Absolutely.
When I left the military, I contracted to different agencies, got involved in dignitary protection, tactical operations, things of that nature, and it kind of segued right into the intelligence gathering and utilizing the tools that we have to do our advanced work and protective details. And when I left that area of work, I used those skills to get into investigative work, utilizing what we learned in the intelligence gathering field and using those tools and assets in the civilian environment.
Right. Now, your office is in Peachtree City. You have one in Atlanta as well?
We do. We have an office downtown Atlanta, 1401 Peachtree Street, and then we also maintain an office down in Peachtree City and the Executive Suites.
Okay, and as far as the areas geographically, where all do y'all go to do your investigations?
Well, we have a footprint in Georgia. We also have a footprint down in Florida, and we're actually an international company. We have clients right now from Egypt. We have a client from Lebanon. We have clients that in a global environment that we live in today, it's easy for someone to contact us from China. We had a client recently from China. And we conduct our work with clients from all over the world. However, we do have a strong footprint here in Georgia.
Well, I was going to say, because when you're especially when you're dealing with custody, you have situations where people take the kids and flee. So I can see where that would become an issue.
That's correct, James. What we try to do in a situation like that is try to stop it before the event happens. And we do that by good intelligence work, collecting information that makes it the threat known, meaning the subject flees with a child. It's a custodial issue, who has custodial rights of the child, and what the intent of the person that has the child if they're going to leave the country. It's hard to get the child back once they leave the country, so we try to stop that event from happening through good investigative work to identify the risk so that the subject doesn't flee with the child.
And I guess probably the biggest challenge you guys face is a lot of times when people engage in divorce or custody, they don't even realize that they may need to turn to you, that it's going to be this high conflict situation. They're coming in. So I'm assuming the earlier they can get you guys involved, the better you'll be able to help them.
We seem to think so, James. We think that what happens is that it's a highly emotional event when it comes to child custody. And the way that, in my experience in the legal system, is the courts are going to look at what's in the best interest of the child. And what happens is that when the emotions run high, all of a sudden the parents that are going through this difficult period start to make it difficult for the child. And so we like for the clients to come to us before it gets way out of control and allow us to do our work to identify which parent is actually in the best interest of the child. We've had cases where our client wasn't the best suited parent. And but we simply present the facts to the attorneys and we let them do what they have to. If it's a bad mix, it's a bad mix. There's nothing we can do about it.
Well, and I'll bring Deb Beecham in, director from My Advocate Center. That's one of the things that we're trying to convey to folks is it's about getting the right professionals involved early on in these cases to keep them from getting way off into the weeds.
Correct, and good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Deb.
Yeah, investigation is such a critical topic, and sometimes I see attorneys having a client pay for investigations but not actually empowering the investigator with all of the information they need, and then sometimes not using what comes from the investigation in the court. So there's some different angles, and some of this we may need to get into offline. So I'm glad you're here because there's a lot swirling around these cases. So yes, having the right professionals makes all the difference, and seeing that the information is used properly for the benefit of the children, which means sometimes, and I call it tough love, sometimes people don't hear from me what they'd like to hear. And sometimes parents are very scared and they're not getting the peace of mind and the support knowing that their child is going to be protected and that their rights are going to be protected. So I'm glad to have you on here to help educate our audience.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, and obviously, how closely do you normally work if I come to you, I'm going into a custody battle or a divorce, how closely will you work with my attorney in that situation to make sure that you're going after the information that the attorney feels like they can use?
Well, what happens, James, is that a lot of times that what works best for us is that to communicate with the attorney is very critical, because we don't want to waste the assets, and that's the client's money, going out here collecting evidence that's not going to be useful. So the attorney can tell us what it is that they need, or they can give us a broad scope and say, guys, go out there and get me something and let's move forward. Historically, though, we like to get some direction from the attorney so that we can go after that particular type of evidence, whatever it is, or whatever information he might have, and that allows us to do our job to help the children, basically.
Well, and that's one of the things that we're finding out is a lot of times the evidence just doesn't come out in these cases, and that's one of the big places where you guys help out, is not only getting the evidence in front of the judge, but being able to boil it down to what's important and kind of leaving all the periphery out there where it doesn't get so muddy.
That's correct. I can tell you that in the years that we've been doing this, that we find that the attorneys love to get a packet with all the evidence, with all the substantiating photographs, drug testing, DNA testing, whatever the situation might be. And but they always want a summary report. They just want to, guys, this is basically what you have here. Now I have to tell you at times that when we launch these investigations that our clients are not always the winner because they don't fit the profile of what the courts say should be the winner. But that's not our job. We're hired there to do the job, to investigate the situation, to find out what actually works best.
Well, I think that's a big part of what attorneys need to do a better job of, Deb, is actually educating the parents in these situations on what is going to be important to the court, because they could save you becoming involved. If I know I'm not living up to what the expectations are, then I don't want to go hire you because I'm going to hurt myself.
Correct.
You're actually, maybe you're a parent who needs some accountability, and maybe you need treatment for an addiction, and having someone kind of call you out and say, you know what, these are the facts of your case, like it or not. But if you get treatment and you improve your parenting ability, your ability to be stable, then actually maybe you get a better resolution in that case. So, and I'm taking it away from the win-lose scenario, because kids don't look at it like win-lose. They want the best that both of their parents have to offer them. So my perspective is a little bit different from a lot of the attorneys going after the intense, prolonged litigation. I want to see, how do we resolve this as quickly as possible, peacefully and safely for the kids. And if it has to take a long time, it has to take a long time, if that's what it takes to get everything to work out right.
Well, and I see your point, and that's something that, if you come back on a bad file on me, I've actually got a blueprint on what I need to change.
That's correct, James. What happens a lot of times is that in the course of the investigation is that we'll have a client that might get a little bit upset because we have gotten the evidence is overwhelming against their spouse, partner, or whatever the situation might be. And the courts will say mandatory drug testing into a drug program, and they don't think that's fair.
It is about the kids, and it's not necessarily a 50-50 custody, but it's the best of each parent in whatever that's going to look like. Obviously, if the world's perfect, what we want is the kid having equal amount of times with both parents.
And you know what? Yeah, and in the beginning of a lot of these cases, you see the opportunity for that, but it gets muddied and complicated unnecessarily. But actually, that reminded me what you just said, James. There's a case here in Atlanta that I'd like to run by you when we're off the air. We might do another show around some case studies, but this is one where the mother was committing financial fraud. She was interviewing divorce attorneys while trying to get pregnant with another child, while having an affair, while carrying on kind of raging addictive behavior. And the attorneys had all this information. They had guardian ad litem, they had forensic accountants, but they didn't have anyone doing the type of investigation that you do. And there was no accountability for any of the professionals on the case. And the father in this case was the one basically targeted to lose by having his hands tied. And this is where law enforcement and investigations come in. They were using false allegations of domestic violence when you could actually see that the mother had cut her own hand.
Right.
And when the police asked the little girl, which parent do you want to go with, she said, well, I want to stay with my daddy. But there was no real fight between the parents. It was all done to turn the case into a custody fight and into an unnecessarily large and prolonged financial battle. And because there was intervention in that case, it turned out that the parties settled or got what they would have gotten at the beginning of the 2-year battle, minus all the losses, minus the involvement of, police reports, false allegations. I mean, that's a waste of taxpayer dollars when you drag in the police to, So, and this is where I'm making the point for having somebody like you, and I think if we understand the difference between investigations that guardian ad litems do and the investigation that can be done by a real investigator.
That's correct, Devin. You make a good point there, because what happens a lot of times in these cases is you will have one person that will try to outspin the other. They'll try to muddy the waters with protective orders, restraining orders, false allegations. They don't show up for the hearings for the protective order. They drop it all together. But the damage has been done. You run into people all the time that will try to say the most negative thing in the world. It's a divorce. And they're going to be just as mean and vindictive as possible. They know what buttons to push. The problem that I see with that type of environment is that it costs clients a lot of money. But it also causes a lot of emotional distress for the kids. Because what happens is, while the parents, or one of the parents, is being very, very vindictive and spending money to just simply harm the other person because they can, the child or the children witness everything. And they're seeing mom and dad go through these things. They're seeing the guardian ad litem coming into the court and saying that this parent is not good, and this parent, because they have a drink on Sundays, or this parent has had all these protective orders put against the other parent. It becomes very difficult. And the dangerous thing is that people that get into these environments don't understand and don't know how to navigate the legal system. So they're basically out there with their eyes wide open, just looking at the headlights going, what do I do now? And the problem that we see in our office is that we have clients that come to us way after the fact. And it's saddening in a way, because if they would have come to us sooner, we would have been able to collect the evidence cleanly, made this case very simple, and then the other person couldn't be so aggressive to try to outspend or damage this person's reputation.
But they didn't know that you existed.
That's correct. And a lot of people have a different, they have this old advantage of or this old perception of what the investigative community is like. They picture the guy there with the bottle of rum in the desk, and
right.
And he's smoking a cigar and one step away from being booted out of his office, and the usual secretary dresses 10 sizes too tight. We've all seen that.
Yeah.
And so, but that's not it. We're a bunch of professional people. We're licensed by the state. You do have to be qualified in the state of Georgia to become a licensed private investigator and to own a company. That being said, is that what we have done as a company is position ourselves to help our clients by getting involved in cell phone forensics, computer forensics, DNA analysis, drug testing, anything that we can use as a tool to help our clients to shorten this madness that we see in the legal system.
Fantastic.
Well, and you are listening to Pro Advocate Radio with our special guest, George Gamble with Investigative Solutions, LLC. George, thank you so much for joining us, and please tell everybody how to get in touch with you guys.
Sure. Our Atlanta office is at 1401 Peachtree Street, 404-829-2720. And we have the Peachtree City office, of course, and that's 678-788-6022. Feel free to give us a call. We never charge for consultations, and we're here to help you.
We'll have this information on the website as well at proadvocateradio.com, and you can send in case details to have your case reviewed. So use the tab under Contact Us and look for Report Cases. And I know we'll do some interesting kind of roundtable discussions on some of these case studies later. But if you send in the information and send us summaries and questions, then we can follow up.